Hello and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing a bit of a vegetable garden summer tour. So I'm going to be speaking around everything that I've got growing in my vegetable garden here and in the other parts of the vegetable garden. And I can't remember if in my last video I had my new painted greenhouse in it, but here it is. It's I can't remember, I think it's seagrass is the colour. It's all protected now so it won't rot anymore, and it's just the same greenhouse as before. It's the same reclaimed wood greenhouse that I've got, but I painted it and I thought it would brighten up the garden a bit having it in a nice colour like that. So I'm going to start over here, which is next to my newly painted greenhouse, is my 3 felt grow bags which are full of these 3 courgette plants here. And they're really starting to take off now. They're starting to get their big leaves on, as you can see, and they're actually starting to get some cucumbers growing at the tip, which hopefully will flower soon, and then we'll get our first harvest not long, maybe in a few weeks. And this is the same variety that I grew in 2019, which is a yellow one, which is quite a big ball one basically. And these did really well, and I wasn't too impressed with the long green ones that I grew, like the traditional ones that I grew last year, because they just didn't really produce much. When they did, they rotted a lot. These ones in 2019 were faultless. They were really, really good, perfect in cake. And you may not think, you know, courgette in cake, but I really think it's something you should try. I loved it when I tried it, which was lemon and courgette cake, which sounds quite weird. It's a weird combination, but it's just a lemon drizzle cake really, and you use courgette in it, and it was just a really, really good cake. But anyway, that's enough about cake. And up here I've still got some seedlings that I've started. These ones being courgettes again, but I thought I'd do a slightly later sowing. And these are like a ball one again, but they're green. And I'd planted them, and I'm going to be putting them, hopefully in the next few days, maybe on the weekend, put them into my other vegetable patch where there's some gaps just to fill it. And I can always put a cloche or mini polytunnel over them if they go too late into the season. So moving over here now to my harvest greenhouse that is stretching quite a bit because it's quite warm today, so it's self-ventilating. And actually, before I move on any further, I've actually got a discount code where you can get 10% off one of these Harvest Smart greenhouses on Harvest's website. All you need to do is use the discount code Welsh Gardener, and then you can get a 10% discount pretty much. And I'll leave all this info in the description so that you don't forget. But anyway, moving on, and here I've got 3 tomato plants growing. I've got black cherry, which is really starting to develop quite well, and I've been pinching these out because they've reached the top of the greenhouse. And then next to this, in the middle, I've got a yellow pear, and these are a really funny shape, and I'm hoping that they'll be quite good as well to grow, because I just thought they'd add a different colour in. Same with the black cherry ones really. And then there I've got tigrella, which is another cool one, stripy one. And down the end I've actually got a gap then, and then I've got an aubergine at the end, which is something I tried growing in 2019 again, but it never really took off very well, and I think I planted it a bit late. Hopefully the same hasn't happened with that one. But anyway, moving over to the other greenhouse. Now over in this greenhouse over here, I've got on the windowsill, I've made 2 shelves here. They were really meant to be for my brother's cacti to go on, but he's never put them out, so I've claimed them. And I've put these basil plants on that I grew from seed. And I tried growing basil from seed last year and failed. Well, not failed, but it didn't go very successfully. But this year they're doing quite well. I've got 4 of those plants actually. It does look like the slugs are taking a bit of a fancy to them, but I can try and sort something out like that. And I'm actually trying out at the moment some slug pellets that are made from wool. They're called wool pellets. And they also have some, I think they have some sheep manure in them as well, that helps to fertilise the plants. So I'm going to be trying them on those basil plants that are being eaten. Then over here I've got my 6 tomato plants that I've got in here. I've got here, let me just check the label. I've got black cherry, and then I've got tigrella, and then I've got yellow pear and the red gork and things like that again in here. And I've actually pinched these out because they've reached the top of the greenhouse. And on the top here as well, I have got glass on the roof now, which I think I've showed in a video before. So hopefully that will mean that they'll get more light and they'll ripen and grow better. And then I've got a shelf up there that I had lupin seedlings on, but I'll be honest, I've forgotten to water them, so they've gone a bit crispy. So there's actually an apple tree branch here that's obstructing my view, but I'm not going to cut that yet, so I'm just going to have to make do with an apple tree branch in front of me. But on this side of the greenhouse here, I've got 2 cucumbers that I've got in pots because I put them out a bit earlier than I should have, so I wanted to keep them in pots so I could bring them in when it was cold, and they've just stayed in pots. And the leaves on the cucumbers are actually being eaten by slugs, which I've never known before. I always think they didn't ever like cucumbers. But anyway, I've also got tigrella over here as well, tomato, but that's just one of the other ones that I was speaking about the other side. But these cucumbers are doing really well. I've got one huge one coming on it at the moment, and I've got other little ones coming that are just starting to grow. And that's mainly on this plant closest to the door, which is probably because it gets more light than the other one, but the other one has still got some coming on it. Now over here on the main patch of this new part of the garden, I've got a very wild looking Monge 2 plants. I put 6-foot canes in, or actually I think they were more like 8 foot, but they're 6 foot when they're in the ground. And these have completely exceeded it. Normally I'm used to growing dwarf varieties of peas and Monge 2, but this year I grew a different variety, which is actually called Spring Blush, and they've just exceeded the height of the canes, so they flopped over a bit. We've also had to put a fencing post in to support the canes. But anyway, yeah, at the base of there, I've got carrots growing. I think are starting to go to seed, but they haven't got any carrot growth on, so hopefully we will be able to pick them. And then over there, there's some runner beans growing up a little wigwam, and that's the most of the runner beans this year, because the other ones haven't really taken off very well, but I'll show you them in a minute. Around the base of them, I've got spinach and lettuce on one side and more lettuce on this side, but the spinach is actually going to seed now, so I'm not sure what to do with that, whether to leave it to go to seed or whether I should just pick it out of the ground and put it in the compost bin. And then next to the pear tree there, which is the pear tree is actually part of the vegetable bed, this new one, I've got some parsnips growing. First time I've ever actually grown parsnips from seed successfully, and that is because I started them on a wet paper towel, and I put the wet paper towel in a clear freezer bag and left them for a couple of weeks, and then planted the rooted seeds into the ground, and they've grown perfectly. Then over here I've got carrots. I've got 3 rows of carrots that I've sowed, Autumn King, and then I've got the same as these, which I can't remember, but I know they finish with intermediate, but that doesn't do much help. But yeah, I've got 3 rows here. The one that is Autumn King is growing really well, and I should probably take this netting off a little bit, but this was just to try and stop the dog walking on it. And the rest haven't started growing yet, but they do take quite a while to germinate here. I've got a row of field or dwarf beans, French dwarf beans there, and I think they're a purple variety. I can't remember exactly what they're called. Might have been purple velvet, but I'm not sure. And then over here I've got some onion sets that I sowed in spring, and their variety is called Rumba, and they're going really well. Their stems are so thick at the moment, which you'll see in the B-roll over the top of this. They've just grown really well, much bigger than the ones that I sow in autumn that I picked yesterday. But I'm going to leave them until they're ready, and then they should be a really good harvest. So now I'm over in the other part of the garden. I'm sorry my face is quite shaded, but the sun's behind me and I couldn't really film it any other way. But here is my sort of mini food forest, I call it. There's wood chip on the floor, and there's blackcurrant bushes growing there. And I've also got some like cosmos and other things growing around the bases of them this year. And I've also planted as well some raspberry runners from over there down here, so that I can just make more food from this little area. And I made this area with the intent to have soft fruit plants and harvests without too much effort, so that's why I've got wood chip on the floor, so there's not too many weeds. And I've actually let a lot of the weeds grow so that there's wildflowers for the bees to forage from, because they're not doing me any harm and they're doing more good than harm to anyone or everyone. So I'm not sure what all of them are, but I know that the bees are enjoying it. So now I'm coming down this way. I've got my perennial kale here, which is more of a tree now, and I've put a big 2x2 inch, that is, post in, or bit of wood, to tie it up to, because it keeps falling over every winter, and I'll check that again in autumn before the winds come. And then I've got a second perennial kale plant here, which has got an old washing line post here to hold it up. And as you can tell if you're new here, recycling and reusing things is big in my garden, because I like to save money and I can't bring myself to throw anything away. And then I've got some Brussels sprouts here with some homemade cane toppers here, which are just blocks of wood that I've put on that are bigger than the actual end of the cane, so they're a bit safer. Then here I've got garlic, and I've got some runner beans, but they're not doing as well as the ones on the wigwam over there because these don't get as much sun. Then behind, or just underneath the camera actually, are some cosmos and some parsnips, and the parsnips again are doing really, really well after I started them a different way this year. And then on this side, the original vegetable patch, which is where I learnt to grow my own food with my family, down this end I've got some Jerusalem artichokes that I was given by a neighbour to try and just grow them basically. They're also known as sunchokes if you don't know what Jerusalem artichokes are. And then here I've got some blank bed space, which is where those courgette seedlings I spoke about earlier are actually going to go out. There was onions here yesterday, but I picked them yesterday evening, and now they're drying on out in the sun. Here I've got yet again another bit of an old washing line. Nothing goes to waste in my garden. And here I've got some sugar snap peas growing that I sowed recently, and because this is fairly shaded, they should do quite well being planted this late. And then I've got 3 tomatoes there and a space here where I'm probably going to put more courgettes. Then here I've got all of my raspberries that I've always had. They're an autumn cropping variety, but they also crop now, which is a bit weird, so they crop twice a year. And I've also got my currants there, which are currently being eaten by some sawfly larvae, which is a problem I've not had before until this year, or last year actually, which is really weird, but they just appeared and they eat all of the leaves. But I've made a garlic spray that has stopped them eating the leaves organically. And lastly for the vegetable garden is this part, which is my raised bed garden. Down here I've got some buckets which have second early Charlotte potatoes in them, and these are growing quite well, so they should be harvested in the next probably month or 2. Then here I've got cosmos growing. I was going to have a full cosmos bed, but only half of it seems to be doing well and the rest has flopped into that, so we've got a little bushy bit here and the rest's a bit bare. Down here then I've got more garlic, and also in that bed there, that's all doing well. Their scapes are starting to grow on them, which are actually edible in salads or sautéed, or what I've done is I've chopped them up and put them in water in a spray bottle, and then that's really good slug deterrent. And then over here I've got my sprouts, which is some more sprouts. I've got 6 here. I think I've got about the same down there, so altogether I've got about 12. Then I've got some flowering spinach again here. And these 2 beds here are actually just strawberries, and they're really, really tasty at the moment. And where the netting is, I haven't had too much problem with anything eating them this year. I've had the odd ones where there's some slugs maybe, but there's not actually too many. And then in here, there's been a few birds eating them, and especially Alfie the dog's been helping himself. But that's fine because we can sacrifice those to get the best crop out of that bed. And then the other half of this bed that isn't garlic then is actually cabbage, which I've got New Brunswick and Greyhound. And the New Brunswick is getting so big for this netting that I think I might just have to take the netting off and just hope that no caterpillars eat it soon. I could just try and use my garlic spray again on that, which should stop the caterpillars eating it. But I think there's some things already eating it now, so I may as well give it a go. And I think that's about it for the whole vegetable garden. I hope you enjoyed watching my garden tour today of my vegetable patch. I know I really enjoy making these videos because they're quite a fun thing to edit and to film and things like that. And I really just like showing what I've been growing because it's something I'm very passionate about. But if you're new here, or even if you're not and you haven't yet, make sure you go down below, hit the subscribe button, like this video and leave a comment to let me know what you're growing this year. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.